Kia ora koutou, kamihi nui kia koutou. I'm Gary Trinder, and it's my honour and privilege to be Director of the New Zealand School of Dance. Thank you all for joining us this evening, and also for those who are joining us through the live stream. The idea of these Pathways talks is to give you an overview about the school, life at the school, some of the programs that we offer. But I know that you too will have your own individual questions about from your own perspective, and after we do a short overview, we will open the floor for you to ask your questions. At which point I'm going to introduce the rest of my colleagues and our panel this evening and ask them to tell you a little about themselves.
Kia ora, ko Paula toko ingoa. My name is Paula Steed-Tustin, and I am Head of Contemporary here at the school. It's my privilege to be in front of you and to the live stream as well, and hopefully in the next hour all your questions will be answered and you'll have a really great insight into how we operate, what our culture is, and how we can help your dreams come true.
Hi everyone, my name is Liesl Eckstein and I am the Student Support Manager here at New Zealand School of Dance. So I work very closely with the students. I help them, I support their journey here at the school in any way possible, really. So my job can be quite large in terms of dealing with the internationals coming in and making sure they're nice and comfortable and settling in well, and working with all students throughout all the cohorts. So I will answer any questions about wellbeing and the amazing health team that we have here, but then also our international program as well.
Kia ora koutou. My name is Christine Gunn. I've been at the school for a fairly long time. I am one of the classical tutors, and I also head the associates program. So if there are any of you that need questions answered on that program or the scholars program, then I can probably help with that.
So the school was founded in 1967 as the National School of Ballet, and we still fulfill a responsibility that was set up at that time, which was to create and provide dancers for the Royal New Zealand Ballet. In the early 80s, it was felt that with the emergence of more and more contemporary dance companies finding their footing in New Zealand, that we should diversify the training a little bit more and include contemporary dance. And in doing so, it was felt at that time that it would be appropriate to change the school's name. And it was at that time that we became the New Zealand School of Dance. Many of those historical pathways are still the premise upon which the school operates today. We still provide dances for the Royal New Zealand Ballet, and earlier this year for Romeo and Juliet, 5 of our male classical students were working with the company. And as I speak now, 6 of our women are working at the other end of Taranaki Street in Serenade, preparing for the Lightscapes tour. The ballet company still visits the school on a regular basis, and the artistic staff of the Royal New Zealand Ballet come into the building at least once, if not twice a week, to teach our students. And that happens from the very first year through the second year and through the third year. And the artistic director of the company, whoever he or she might be at that time, also visits the school mid-year to undertake the assessment event. And obviously, if they are interested in any of the dancers at that time, they will make some dialogue with the student expressing their interest in them. Our commitment to the contemporary sector is still also very prevalent, and we pride ourselves on having ongoing relationships with the foremost contemporary dance companies in New Zealand, although that relationship is a little bit more fluid because the majority of them are project funded, and therefore we don't have a relationship with exclusively one company. But I'm sure that Paula will be able to tell you a little bit more about that. We offer 2 qualifications at the school. We offer the New Zealand Diploma in Dance, and that sits at level 6 on the New Zealand Qualifications Framework, and is the equivalent of 2 years of an undergraduate degree. And our third year, which is by invitation, is we have the New Zealand School of Dance Diploma in Dance Performance, and that sits at level 7 on the qualifications framework, and that is the equivalent of an undergraduate degree. I'm very proud of those qualifications, although I don't think necessarily the students at the point of entry fully understand or appreciate their value, because I think most of the students coming into the school want to get a job, they want to dance professionally, and they want to be out there in front of a paying public. But unfortunately, dance is a very ageist profession, and unfortunately, the human body doesn't go on as long as we would like it to. Therefore, they mostly will need to face the point of transition at some point into possibly another career, or one that's allied to their creative pursuit in dance. And at that point, I think it's really valuable that they have that strong academic underpinning. For that reason, we chose not to offer a degree program, because it's enshrined in legislation in New Zealand what constitutes a degree. And it would necessitate of us a considerable amount of time in research. And we didn't want to dilute the course that we have, because currently our course is 70% practical and 30% theoretical. There are some academic subjects that students deal with, but our primary focus was to provide practitioners, to provide dancers of excellent capability. And that, too, is one of the reasons why we asked students who are entering the school, be it at the associate program or in the full-time program, as to them studying classical ballet or contemporary dance. As you'll recognize yourselves these days, the technical standard of dancers is remarkable. You've only got to look online at platforms like YouTube to see just how capable dancers are these days. And we felt that if we ended up with a situation where dancers were spending equal amounts of time doing classical ballet and contemporary, it really would dilute their training, because we really only have them for the 2 years or 3 years. And that time goes incredibly quickly at the school. So it was felt that in order for us to compete at an international level and to ensure that the students had the best skills possible in order to be work ready, that we needed to make some decisions. And sometimes that makes a tough choice, because we have a lot of students who say, but I love classical ballet and I love contemporary dance. Can I tick both boxes? Well, unfortunately, you can't. And even down to the audition day, it's quite specific in terms of the nature of what we're asking you. But I'm going to hand over to Paula, who's going to tell you a little bit more specifically about life at the school and day at the school.
Thank you, Gary. As Gary said, we stand really strong in the fact that we are able to train our dancers really technically. And so for that, we have in the mornings, a normal day would be that you'd come into the school and your first class would be your technique. And usually it's your technique class and your major that you do. So you would have that 5 times a week. You also do your other, what we call minor subject, which is the ones where if you're a contemporary major, you would do classical ballet, and you do that 3 times. And likewise with the classical students, would then do contemporary 3 times a week as well. Even though we are being quite specific into what they need, it is still really important for us to have that going forward, that you are able to do both, and they each have their purpose in that as well. With your allied subjects that you'd have, we align the two quite well. So where you would have a classical student doing pas de deux, and contemporary you would have partnering. You would have coaching and point work for the classicals, and we have improvisation. So both are really honing into what that technical aspect is needed for the industry. We also have things like repertoire, so obviously the classicals would learn some classical rep, and there's quite specific ones around that. And for contemporary as well, you either have rep that is made on you by guest choreographers or our tutors here, and then we also have rep that is extant rep, so rep that has been around for a while. We also have quite an extensive wellbeing program that Liesl will talk to, and within that we have things like conditioning, your gym program. So there's a lot of these things that help support you as a technical dancer in order to be nice and strong and to be able to do the things that we require of you when we are doing these allied subjects, or the technique that you do in the mornings as well. You have academics, as Gary said, so they vary between music, anatomy, dance history, dance studies, nutrition. Like, there's a lot of different aspects to what that is for academic side of things. A new thing that we've got in there that COVID brought to life for us is around doing dance film and what that looks like now. For both the classical and the contemporary majors, it's really important that you have that understanding of what dance film is these days, because that's definitely something that has taken off in the last few years. Composition is quite a big element of what we do throughout all of the years and through both streams as well. In contemporary, it's pretty obvious that composition is part of your pathway and what is going to be required of you in the industry. And we felt that for the classical, that is just as important. We need to keep growing these classical choreographers, and how best to do that, which is to teach them how to, at such a influential stage of their career. So you get to learn how to choreograph, and how to choreograph on yourself, on peers, how to be a leader, and that's a really important part of what we have in both streams. I'm going to hand you over now to Liesl, who's just going to talk a bit more about the sort of wellness and well-being side of some of the subjects that we're doing.
Thanks, Paula. So within my role, I work with a pretty amazing health team here, and then we work very closely with the artistic staff as well. So in my role, I almost see myself as like the bridge in between the student and the artistic staff member of how we can support you, not only in studio, but outside of studio as well. We're very passionate about the full picture of you, not just as a dancer, but as a human. So we take your physical and mental health very seriously here, and we are making sure that we are always working one-on-one with you all to make sure that we are giving you all the tools to be able to self-manage yourselves throughout your training and throughout your pathway of time here at the school, and then graduating into your career. So so I've got myself, and then we've got an amazing health team who includes 2 physiotherapists, who there's always one on site every day. Then there is a dietitian, there's a sports doctor, there's a Pilates rehabilitation coach, and we all work together really closely depending on what the student needs at that time, and to really ensure that they are thriving throughout their study and their time here with us. So at the start of the year, when a student enters the school, myself and the core tutor that you'll be working with, depending on your stream, we meet with you at the start of the year individually with yourself and your support person, whether that is a mum or dad or auntie, aunt, whoever it is, and we talk about you and what you need in your time here. What is good for us to know about you? What support do you maybe need forward, physically, mentally, anything? Accommodation, settling in Wellington, if Wellington is new for you, we help with that transition as well. So I'm really passionate in walking around Wellington, rain or shine, and making sure you're feeling really comfortable here, because we're very aware that it's not just you are just coming to a new dance school, you're coming to a new city sometimes as well, meeting new friends, all of that. During that orientation time as well, so obviously we get to know you very well, very quickly, and then we also walk down to Massey Health as well. So as part of your service here as well with the school, you're with Massey Health, so the students have access to really discounted GPs, nurses, and free counselling as well, which is just a 5-10 minute walk down the road. So all students have that, which is really helpful at times. And then our relationship within Massey Health as well, within the health team, is we're really close and keep connected, so we can help with that ongoing support going forward. what else is there? Accommodation. So these questions might come up, and I can talk more in detail if they do come up if you're interested. But depending on age coming into the school, if you're Wellington based, obviously you might save some money and stay at home. Otherwise, if you're under 18, under 17, we recommend you going to host families, and we've got the connection there, and I can talk about this if the questions come up later. Or if you're 17 and above, then we've got affiliation with the Cube, which is part of Massey University as well, which, just like Massey Health, is about 10-15 minute walk just up the road as well. So that is more of like apartment living, a bit more independence needed there. So there's got those options there, and students, it's a really nice transition of students coming into the first year and maybe starting with a host family and having that support there, and then maybe then second year moving into the Cube, and then might even go flatting into third year, and that's quite common within the students, depending on the age and depending on the experience of living outside of home or not. Yes, I'll pass it on. Okay, over to Gary.
I think that what Liesel's alluded to is one of sort of the challenges that we face when we're considering students for entry into the school, because we are a tertiary provider. We're funded by the Tertiary Education Commission. And our programs, as I mentioned already, are aligned to degree programs. But we're also very cognizant of the fact that the students coming into the school are very young. And in many instances, this will be the first time that they're possibly living away from home. They have an awful lot to deal with, because it's only fair that one says this is a very competitive arena, and we're very mindful of that. A lot of the students who would come into the school possibly are at the very top of the pyramid in their local ballet schools. They could be just amongst one or two senior students. And then they walk into an environment such as ours, where we supplement the student numbers by drawing students from Australia or internationally. And a student can come into this environment and suddenly find that that pyramid is completely flipped on its head, because a student who was once at the very top in their local ballet school might find themselves surrounded by people who are doing more pirouettes than they've ever seen before, who've got higher legs than they ever dreamed of, and who can balance on their left earlobe a lot longer than they thought humanly possible. So they work their way through the challenges that presents to them, coming out at the very end of that time to go into an industry that will flip that pyramid on its head again and set them off to start standing holding a spear for 11 months of the year, with the hope that maybe occasionally they might get to do a little step and a hop, but it might not be very many things to do in that time. So we obviously want to try and build an environment where the students have a very robust thinking process. They need to be very self-motivated, very driven. We potentially have between 80 to 85 full-time students studying at school in any 1 year. So we can't afford to handhold them. We're a very small team of people. And those are the sort of things we also look for at our audition. And we're looking for those that are self-motivated, who show that little something, who can be courageous enough to step outside their comfort zone. Because that's what's going to be asked of them, not only just on that one day, but every day. That's the environment we work in. And we need those that will approach us and tell us, this is the company I'm interested in. This is the choreographer I want to work with. How do you make that happen? How do you and I work that into my year? So it's those kind of characteristics that set that student aside in terms of the success rate that the school has. Yes, it's not a situation where we can't accept students into the school on the premise that they will expect to be passengers driven by us. We need every student who comes to this school to have a reason for their being in this school, and we acknowledge that we're only a platform. We're simply a stepping stone in their career trajectory. So they also need to be driving their own careers. That's really, really important to stress. I'm conscious that we've spoken quite a bit, and I'm sure that you probably have one or two or several questions. And we'd love to hear from the young people in the audience too, if there's anybody who would like to know more of us. We're all at your disposal. Yeah. This is Rocio, by the way, who's our marketing manager. So she's kindly going to facilitate the dialogue between the audience.
I was just gonna ask, like, with the contemporary associates, is the age difference, like, for people going to like classical associates? So, like, can you be older if you're going into contemporary? Or
Yes, you certainly can. And this year, or coming up for next year, we are going to be changing the program, the Associates program, very slightly. Some of you may have seen, but that will be advertised on our website very shortly. But yes, we anticipate that in auditioning for the Associate program, we like students coming in to be at year 9, so that they really serve 3 years on the Associate program as a classical student, year 9, year 10 and 11 at school. But we're encouraging that the contemporary program will start at year 10, so that you're doing year 10, 11 and 12 at least at school, so that you can be 17 going on 18 by the time you come to the school, rather than 16-year-olds, and possibly even older. But yeah, the associate program is there, and then also going on, and I'll steal Paula's thunder, we have the CIP program, which is the Contemporary Intensive program, which also caters for that older age group and gives them a good introduction to the school as well.
thank you.
Could you talk a little bit about the academic subjects at school?
Yes, in the first and second year, the students all study in a block course, basically, music, dance history and dance studies, which history is self-explanatory. Dance studies includes dance critique and everything else. And then they also study anatomy and relate that to injury management. And in fact, our anatomy section, our anatomy program is actually delivered by one of our physiotherapists. So they're very knowledgeable and about injury prevention. So that gets covered in the anatomy course. And we really do include now the compositional elements in the academic side of the course. But we don't actually continue with anything like mathematics or English or whatever. It's definitely related to the dance. Yes, each student, because the qualification has 120 credits for each year in the first diploma, the level 6 diploma. Every student needs to pass every single subject, be it practical or theoretical, to be able to gain that first year and move on to the second year. So by the end of it, it's 240 credits they will have gained on that 2-year program.
So what percentage of your students would continue on to a professional dance career?
I'll hand that back to Gary.
It's a really good question. I would say that I hate using the C word, but pre-COVID, that's the success rate was considerably higher. It was more aligned to 70% within 26 weeks of graduating, which is the key performance indicator we need to report to government. Subsequent to COVID, it hasn't been as successful, and we haven't seen as much movement happening even within dancers in professional companies since COVID. There simply has not been the same level of turnover that we've seen, so it has been harder for should we say, graduating students who don't have very much professional experience behind them to get their foot in the door. I think that is changing, and I think the sense of the new normal is impacting, and we are seeing certainly global barriers are coming down. People are enjoying travel much more again now. So I think confidence amongst the dance community is resurging. So I do think those stats will pick up again, but it is still quite a challenging environment for students, which is partially why we feel it's so important that they have the strong academic credentials to draw upon. We did an evaluation just recently to examine where many of our graduates had gone on to. And we found that 15 of our graduates are now practicing physiotherapists. And I think what it sort of indicated to me is that many of them have pursued creative arts or creative careers. And thankfully for us, we're benefiting by them giving back to the industry through different ways. We have a number who are architects, and I keep thinking they're going to be designing the next opera houses of the world. So I'm very happy that they pursue all of these things. But I mean, again, it's one of the things. I mean, dance training, even if a student doesn't necessarily make it into a performance career, there are so many attributes that they acquire from a dance training environment in terms of self-discipline, self-motivation, time management. There's an awful lot that they bring to every industry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just a follow-on question. Do you have information regarding those moving on to dance careers nationally versus internationally?
That's a tricky question. We do keep stats on that. The environment is not necessarily always in our control in that regard. One of the things I often say to students, because we do have a comprehensive program in terms of dancer career planning, and that's headed by Liesl. But not everybody's given the same advantage, because we do find that some students have the fortunate lineage in their lives that they have access to 2 passports. And we have a number, say a student who is a New Zealand citizen, but also a citizen of Ireland, they can still access all of the EU countries. So chances are they have the legal right to work over there and will gravitate to that part of the world. It hasn't been so compatible with the UK, as we know through Brexit. That's changed the situation quite dramatically. So where a student heads is not necessarily always in our control. They will gravitate to where they think that they're going to get the best environment, the best salary, whether they have family over there, the touring opportunities, the repertoire. We are a New Zealand school, we're the national school here, so we always try and encourage them to stay here. But our National Ballet Company only has 34 full-time dancers, so the possibilities of them remaining here sometimes is challenged only by the fact that the company doesn't necessarily have contracts available.
Thank you.
We have one question coming from the live stream. If you're 1 year away from finishing Year 12 school, coming into the classical stream, is there an opportunity to continue those school studies along with your academic requirements?
Yes, well, at the moment there is, and at the moment, just to emphasise, and obviously this can change if we have a change of government and nothing is in concrete. At the moment, our students are entitled to the first year of student-free study, as with any tertiary institution. So within that, but as I say, that may change. If they want to continue and do level 12 and year 12 and year 13, or level 2 and level 3 NCEA, they can continue to do that through Te Kura, the correspondence school. But we do encourage, because they're very full days that they meet when they first come here, that you possibly only pick up 1 or 2 subjects at the most, and maybe take 2 years to complete your level 12, your year 12, your level 2. And if we do continue with our fees free, then Te Kura needs to be paid for, because you can't claim twice from the government and get 2 freebies, as it were. So yeah, yes, it is possible, but we try and encourage people to limit the number of subjects that they're studying outside of the school.
Right.
Sorry, Rosera, I'll add to that. So at the start of the year, when we do meet with yourself and your support network, this is a question that comes up quite often, and we do talk about outside commitments that you are intending to do coming in as a first year. And we encourage, obviously, every student's going to be different, and their workload and their management will be different of how much that they can handle outside of training. But we do encourage, if you can, especially for that first 6 months, keep it to a minimum, because the first 6 months of just adapting to full-time training and the intensity and the demands, it's high demands to start with, and it continues on. So we do have this conversation at the start of the year and support you through that, but we do understand that some further papers or studying sometimes is required. So just wanted to reiterate that.
What is the live audition like? What's the process?
As Gary mentioned, it's about bringing your courageous self. So on the day, you have a mighty good breakfast. And the process of when you're coming in is that we would do a similar talk to this. We'd just talk a little bit about the school, because not everyone has had the privilege of you guys of getting to know us and what we're about. There'll be quite a large faculty. This is specifically for those here in Wellington, so for the New Zealand live auditions. You would then, as Gary mentioned, you need to choose either the classical or the contemporary. So you would then have your class in that major, and then you also have a class in the minor as well. And then from there, the staff have seen you in both, and then we have quite an extensive conversation and kōrero around, is it the right fit for both sides as well? And then only the shortlisted people would then have interviews where we get to know you just a little bit more, and I don't know, it just gives us greater insight into who you are as a person, because we work very closely with you over the 2 or 3 years. For Australians, very similar process. You have the 2 classes, and Gary and I go to those in Australia, and we do Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane. And then international, we require that to be online. So all the detail is on the website, so just go there. Applications are open. There's quite a detailed, you have to get a medical and an orthopaedic form, so they do take a while. So I really encourage you to get onto it now. Don't think you've got a lot of time, because it's not till September. Get onto those now, is our advice on that one. But please feel free to email us if you've got any questions about anything as well. But a lot of the detail of what's required for that is on our website. So did I answer everything on that one?
I'd just like to add to Paula's comments. The interview, for me, is probably the most important aspect in the audition. Obviously, we're looking for dancers who have physical capability. We look at musicality, coordination, achievement to date. But for me, the interview is the opportunity to find out who the individual is. And particularly, because the very nature of dance training tends to be, I will demonstrate, you follow, it doesn't allow us a great deal of opportunity to find out anything about that person's dreams, their aspirations, who they are, their personalities. And it's really important for us because the 2 or 3 years that they spend here at the school, it's a very close relationship, and we have to learn to trust each other. We only really have sort of about 90 minutes in that audition to get to have some understanding of each other. And it's at the interview where we really start to understand whether it's a good fit for us, because sometimes if a dancer were to walk in, say, and this is not a great example, but they said, my aspiration is to be a principal of New York City Ballet, chances are this was probably maybe not the best fit for you to come here. So we have to consider where your aspirations lie and how best we can support you in that endeavor. We also ask a little bit, we love to hear the student voice. I'm just expressing that to the parents. It's not always helpful if you speak on their behalf. We like to know what their dreams are, and we need to be able to know, because fundamentally they're the ones that we're going to be working with most closely. And for you as dancers, you need to be brave enough to talk to us. Yes, it's no good just coming into the environment and everything we say, you just go, That's not going to help. We need to know really what you want to do, who you're going to be. I have a very good example. We had a very lovely young man here called Jesse Holmes, and he had auditioned for West Australian Ballet and had been successful. And the director phoned to my office to let him know that he had a contract, and I grabbed Jesse out of the studio and I took him up to my office and I handed him the phone, and he just went, "Awesome, awesome, oh, that's awesome, awesome." And eventually I wrote a little note on a post-it and I just said, "Please say something else." Yes. So it's those sort of things. It's the interview, because the reality is dance is not necessarily going to be entirely sustained by public funding. There are people who will give private donations, or there might be a sponsor, or the ambassador from a certain country needs to meet with that dancer. And it's those sort of things that dancers don't necessarily consider make them the most employable people. But that's the reality. Companies will be looking for people who are their best ambassadors. And it's not only being a strong technician, but it's also being the person who can be the voice of that company. And that is, for us, is what the interview is about. Can you be the voice of the school for the time that you're here? Will you be a great ambassador for our art form? Will you be the person who can be the voice of the industry? Those are the people that really excite us, and that's why the interview is so important for us.
I just have two questions. How many domestic students do you take each year? And can you talk a little bit about what their preparation is in the lead up to the audition?
Yeah, certainly. I'll take the first one first. We audition in New Zealand first and foremost. The reality is, we need, just to be financially viable, we need to have about 30 to 35 students in our first year cohort. So the ability to recruit exclusively from New Zealand is not always possible. We did manage to do it through COVID, I have to say. We did do it, but it's not necessarily always our reality. We also have to be conscious too that to deliver the program, I'm speaking here primarily wearing my hat as head of the classical stream, I also have to have enough male to female as well, because if I have a cohort of only women, I can't do pas de deux, I can't do repertoire. I'm really restricted in what I'm able to deliver for the student experience. So I have to know, and that means sometimes I have to look further afield. We've often had to recruit especially male dancers from overseas. But yes, we look primarily here in New Zealand in the first instance, and obviously our ideal would be to have a cohort of all New Zealand students. But in terms of the number and the student body we have in any one year, the numbers are not that large on occasion. The preparation, I'm sure, would you like to talk about the preparation?
The preparation is around making sure you're ready for full time, and that doesn't just mean can you do pliés really well. It's around going, are you able to sustain it fitness wise? So sometimes if you've been doing one dance class or 5 dance classes a week, but that's it, sometimes that doesn't allow us to, when we look at it and go, would you be able to sustain full-time training? So it's also looking at those other aspects, the fitness, the gym, all of those things that kind of make up that you are going to be strong and stable and have core fundamentals. We have amazing teachers here, so technically we can teach you anything, but you need to be able to have that core stability and that fitness and the robustness, as Gary had mentioned, to physically be able to do this. Another thing that I'm sure Liesl will agree with is around making sure you are ready in the build-up to be able to do your own washing, to have cooking lessons. All of those life skills are so important. And I can't speak enough of how valuable that is as well in the lead-up and the build to coming here as well. Does anyone want to add anything to that?
Is it still possible to get into associates if you're in year 9, or is it only limited to people going into year 9?
Up until this year, we have said it is possible to audition. But because our program, apart from anything else, has grown too large to handle in a way, we really need to try and curtail that and encourage the associates to come in at year 9 and then complete their 3 years. And likewise, I'll just add on, and for the scholars to actually enter when they're going to be in year 6 at school, whether they're national scholars or regional scholars. This year I think we're really going to say you need to be year 9 to come in onto the associates program if you're going to be a classical major, and year 10 as a contemporary major.
Any other questions?
Hi. Could you please talk a little bit about the preferred age brackets for entering the school, and also the discrepancy between the entry level for the contemporary and classical associates programs?
Yes, ideally the age we want you to come into the school for the classical course would be 16 years old. Simply because if we keep you for 2 or 3 years, you're going to be 18 or 19 leaving, and the profession really desires you to be that age and to start gaining your experience in any company. As Gary mentioned earlier, a career can be quite short-lived, and so a company director will be wanting to get as many years out of you as possible. Whereas with contemporary companies, we do say a little bit older, because generally contemporary companies like you to have had a few more life skills and life experience before you actually join them, just with the way they work, in the fact that it's a lot of the creative process will be down to the dancers as well as the choreographers, rather than dare I say, monkey do, monkey say in the classical profession, which you're actually getting instructed in a certain way. So there is sort of a 1 or 2 year leeway, but the reason behind the young intake for classical dancers is because what the profession desires afterwards.
How much dance would you have in an average day? Like, what would the kind of timetable look like, starting and ending?
And an average day, I would say you're getting, well, from 9 o'clock you start doing a warm-up that our health team have set, and then 9:15 to 10:45 you've got class, and then etc. It goes like that. So physically, and then they've also got a gym program that sometimes if you're doing rehabilitation or a gym program, you would start that at 8:30. So that's your morning, and then we have an hour for lunch, and then you'd probably get 2 more practical classes after that before you head into more of the academic side. So it is very physical, as Gary mentioned earlier. It's about 70-30% of the average day, and some days vary depending on what is on and what subjects or units that you're completing at that time.
Did that answer your question? Yeah. It would probably be, I mean, obviously there are peaks and troughs within the year. Where we're preparing for a performance, we probably would be rehearsing on Saturdays as well. Though most of the year we try where possible to give the, certainly our first year students 2 days for rest and recovery. We found that that's really very valuable. But the days are long, and there is an expectation that you would commit to, as Paula said, gym programs as well, the cardiovascular programs. Your own creative work needs to be considered in there, compositional work. So you literally are living and breathing the building once you come in here. I'm just conscious of the time. Are we? Yeah. Right, so is there any burning questions? I mean, we still have the next 2 days, so, and you've got to sort of know us now. We're still going to be around, so if there's anything that comes to mind, please don't hesitate to come and ask us, because so there's a lot to assimilate from what we've said today, and I'm sure that you'll go home and go, I wonder what they meant by that. And so please don't hesitate if there's anything further we can help you with. So thank you so much for coming this evening. We've really enjoyed speaking with you, and we hope that we helped a little bit in answering your questions. So thank you once again.